A former Temple football player is trying to get his life back on track tonight, a day after rape charges against him were dropped. Praise Martin-Oguike was finally able to break his silence about the crime police now say never happened. Action News reporter Dan Cuellar spoke with him today, and Dan, this man's life has been turned upside down.
That's right, Brian. It is a stunning turn of events in the story that drew national attention. The Temple football player who was thrown out of the university and vilified on the internet after being accused of rape now says he feels vindicated that the DA's office has dropped the charges.
It's been tough. It's been tough, you know. I don't even know how to explain it. It's somewhere that nobody wants to be.
Praise Martin-Oguike says it has been 17 months of hell. He was 18 years old at the time when, back on Memorial Day weekend of last year, he was accused by a 21-year-old fellow student he was dating of raping and assaulting her. This inside a fourth-floor dorm room on Temple's campus.
When it first happened, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know where to go, you know.
The Temple Owl linebacker in his freshman year was ostracized, stripped of his athletic scholarship, kicked out of Temple, and vilified nationally and on the internet.
Everything that went on, you know, on Twitter and all over the internet, it was just tough to handle for me.
Martin-Oguike's lawyer says it wasn't until they secured his accuser's phone records and internet chats that the truth was revealed. His accuser did it out of spite because he refused to have a long-term relationship with her.
Thousands of texts, thousands of chats to close confidants that ultimately, I think, revealed exactly what we had said from the beginning, that these were false allegations.
Martin-Oguike and his family immigrated here from Nigeria back in 1999. Praise says he holds no grudges against his accuser.
I gotta look at it in a positive way, you know. It made me a better person, you know. I learned a lot from the whole experience, and moving forward, you know.
Now, the DA's office has not said if it will pursue criminal charges against the woman for making false allegations. Meanwhile, Praise Martin-Oguike says while he has not heard back from the university, he hopes to return there and attend medical school. We're live here at the DA's office. Dan Cuellar, Channel 6, Action News.
This email is addressed to the following people at Temple University: to the Board of Trustees, to Dr. Neil Theobald, the President, to Hai Lung Dai, the Provost, to Sandra Foehl, Title IX Coordinator, to Stephanie Ives, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, to Andrea Seiss, Senior Associate Dean of Students, to Rachel Stark, Associate Dean of Students, and to Rebecca Rhodes, Assistant Dean of Students. The email is as follows. This is primarily directed toward those who had their hands in the decision to expel Praise Martin-Oguike from Temple University, especially Title IX Coordinator Sandra Foehl, the overarching authority on gender equity compliance at Temple U, and overseer of the university's adjudications of sexual assault accusations. It is also meant for those who sat idly by and thought that a system which produced such a result was anywhere near the embodiment of justice. Also, I figured some of you may enjoy the show. My name is Jonathan Taylor. I am the founder of A Voice for Male Students, the motto of which is Educational Equity for Men and Boys. Part of its mission statement is to raise awareness of the structural and cultural barriers men and boys face in receiving an equitable education, and to advocate the equal human rights of men and boys in academia. One of those human rights is due process. What can at best be called the incompetence and ineptitude of your administration has been on display this week in the national media. As you should know, the rape charges against Praise Martin-Oguike, the student who was accused of sexual assault last year at your university, who you expelled, who was kicked off the football team, who was stripped of his scholarship, and who was nationally demonized, were dropped shortly after Judge Dennis Cohen allowed evidence from the accuser's phone to be submitted. Although this proved to be damning evidence that immediately shattered the accuser's case, it has done very little to repair the wreckage of this young man's life. You will note that, according to ABC News, Praise Martin-Oguike is a native of Nigeria who immigrated to the United States with his parents in 1999. Perhaps his family brought him to this country under the assumption that doing so would open up wonderful new opportunities for him. They indeed opened up opportunities, but not the kind his parents wished for their son. The public is increasingly acquainted with this travesty. Unfortunately, they are not yet fully acquainted with the names and faces of those responsible for it. I aim to remedy that. That is why I am posting this letter online for public exposure. So whenever someone Googles your administration or your names, they will know your work, whether it was your choice to wreck the life of this young man on such a flimsy accusation, or your choice to stand idly by and watch and nod your head. If you doubt me, Google Title IX Coordinator Michelle Vieira of A&M Commerce and see for yourself. When I interviewed her last year about her university's decision to adopt the preponderance of evidence standard in adjudicating matters of sexual misconduct, the standard by which administrators need only be 50.01% sure that the accusation was true, I looked her in the eye and asked her if the policy was justified. And after a long and heavy silence, she responded, unaware at the time that she was being recorded, with the bureaucratic equivalent of, "I can't answer that." That was the same standard of evidence by which you cast out Praise Martin-Oguike. I know this because the April 4th, 2011 Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education compels you to adopt this standard. Not that it absolves you, of course. I'm sure at this point that the mental hamsters of your administrators, especially that of your Title IX coordinator, are busy at the wheel, spinning out not reasons, but rationalizations as to why Temple U administrators are undeserving of such criticism. If nothing else, the public may expect the usual deflection of, "I'm just doing my job," the same argument by which many have gone down on the wrong side of history. We may also expect some of you to hide behind the most fraudulent statistics on sexual assault that are yet popular within certain academic circles, as if the supposedly high rates of sexual assault on college campuses lend justification to a due process be damned approach to adjudicating sexual misconduct. In particular, we may expect the all-too-predictable claim cited in the Dear Colleague letter that 1 in 5 college women are raped, and which Ruslan Ali, former Assistant Secretary of the Department of Education's Office on Civil Rights, used to rationalize the preponderance standard within the letter itself. We may also expect that in hiding behind this statistic you would neglect the fact that despite having roughly 19,000 female students, you have an average of 5 sexual assault accusations a year. And even assuming that all of those reports are true, and that only 1 in 10 sexual assaults are reported, both of which are generous assumptions at this point, it would still be the case that 1 in 380 students report the matter, an extremely far cry from the commonly accepted 1 in 5. We may also expect the dishonest and self-serving subterfuge that your policies are not truly discriminatory against male students, because the wording of education policy does not single out men and boys per se. It only singles out and reduces the rights of those who are accused, 99% of whom just happen to be men and boys. You would of course forget that in so doing, you would be using the similar rationales as those who not too long ago claimed that they were not discriminating against blacks per se, but rather discriminating against those whose ancestors did not own land prior to the Emancipation Proclamation. I have seen such rationalizations time and time again in a wide variety of educational areas. I archive these rationalizations and teach others how to identify them. While they vary endlessly, in the end they are all cosmetic variations varnished upon one simple message: fuck men and boys. Message received. Admittedly, it took some of us a while, but we finally got the message. As to those who were not central to the expulsion of Praise Martin-Oguike and merely stood on the sidelines, perhaps you think you are being treated unfairly by being included in this cloud of condemnation. Perhaps you think that while you sit and watch the enforcers of the politics of collective guilt, much of what gender politics in academia is premised upon nowadays, that you yourself should be spared the same methods of accountability by which you seem to be all too content to see them destroy the lives of your students. I see things differently. We will always have people who are happy to be the functionaries of injustice, and who are happy to roll the dice on this or that member of this or that group, whether it is against blacks, or gays, or men, and so forth. Even more so if it procures them a crisp dollar, a comfy office, and a shiny nameplate. That does not change from age to age. What does change, however, is the degree to which everyone else accepts them within their midst and accepts the system and the institutional culture which produces them. According to various news sources, your university is refraining from commenting publicly on this case. In addition, Praise allegedly wants to return to Temple University and attend medical school. I have no idea if that will happen, but if it does, allow me to make a recommendation. If he returns there and faces an atmosphere of retaliatory harassment, bullying, and intimidation from the Temple community, you might try stepping outside the normal protocol for a brief moment and apply Title IX protections regarding retaliatory harassment to Praise, just as you would without question and as a matter of course, if he were a woman. To be more specific, although the April 4, 2011 Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education directs administrators to crack down on retaliation against accusers, which would be on page 5 of the directive, by the way, but says nothing about retaliation against those who are wrongly accused, just go ahead and assume that it was an honest mistake that they left that part out. You know, along with all those other honest mistakes we have witnessed in our universities, such as how Duke University and Hofstra University and so forth have treated the wrongly accused. In case it hasn't become clear at this point, this is not a dialogue. True dialogue with the possibility of substantial change is impossible, given that the continued employment of far too many in academia depends upon the exact opposite. No, the primary purpose of this email is to teach the world, including the next generation which will replace you, where the status quo is messing up, what needs to change, and in what spirit our educational institutions should be approached for the present. It is also to show parents whose sons might one day consider going to Temple University exactly what kind of school Temple is. And if you still think that this email is in any way inappropriate or harsh, you may console yourself with the fact that you are not Praise Martin-Oguike.